Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we are studying Daf Nun of Masechta Shabbos. Quick overview before we begin. The Daf today will begin discussing moving wool insulation. So if you insulate a pot with wool shearings, can you move those wool shearings, or are they muktza? Okay. How do you make a muktza item not muktza? So that's an interesting question, right? Let's say you have an item, and generally speaking, you would have no need for it on Shabbos. It would be muktza, but you want to be able to use it on Shabbos. So how do you make it not muktza? What else? All right. Okay, and then it gets into like some random stuff in the middle of the page, whacking olives against stones to sweeten them, all sorts of stuff. And at the end, we talk about the end of the Mishnah. We get to a new Mishnah, and we talk about a box that has a pot that is insulated in the box. Can you take that pot out of the box? The Machlokas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in the Chacham in the Mishnah. We will get to all of this. Let's get started. Daf Nun Amud Aleph. Mem Tes Amud Beis. 4 lines from the bottom of the page. 5 lines really. Begizei tzemer ve'ein metatlin. So the Mishnah says that you are allowed to insulate a pot with wool shearings. However, you may not move the wool shearings because they're muktza. Okay. Amar Rava lo shanu ela shelo taman boen aval taman boen metatlin osan. Interesting. So Rava says, look, when we say that you're not allowed to move these wool shearings, that's only if you didn't insulate with them. Meaning wool shearings in stam are muktza, but if you insulated with them, then they're no longer muktza. So to which Eisviahu me'Rabbanan bar Yomei leRava. Now one of the Rabbanan bar Yomei asked the kasha on Rava, what's a Rabbanan bar Yomei? So Rashi says, Oso ayom ba lebeis midrash utchila. It was his first day in the Beis HaMedrash, first day in Yeshiva, and already he's asking kashas on the Rosh Yeshiva. He's asking kashas on Rava. Okay. But he asked the obvious question, the question that I'm sure everybody's thinking, which is, our Mishnah says, Tomnin begizei tzemer ve'ein metatlin osa. Our Mishnah says that you can insulate with wool shearings, and yet you would not be able to move them. Keitzadu oses, so then how does he get, the Mishnah then explains, well, this being the case, well then how does he get the pot out from the insulation? So notel sakisui ve'hein noflos. So what you do is you pick up the lid to the pot, and whatever wool is on the lid will just kind of fall off. So clearly the Mishnah is demonstrating that even though you are insulating with these wool shearings, they are nonetheless muktza. So how come Rava is saying that if you insulate with the wool shearings, then they would no longer be muktza? So, Ela I itmar, hachi itmar. So Gemara says, if you have to kind of reword Rava's statement because it doesn't jive with our Mishnah. So what was he saying? Amar Rava, lo shanu ela shelo yichadan la'atmana. Aval yichadan la'atmana metaltan osan. Oh, so when we say that these wool shearings remain muktza, that's only if you didn't specifically set them aside to be, for insulating a pot. Meaning, if you took wool shearings, and in general, wool shearings will be, further developed into threads and to be used for weaving and things like that. So they would be muktza. Even if you insulate with them, they would remain muktza, as the Mishnah says, right? You can insulate with these wool shearings, but you can't move them. However, Rav is saying, but if you said, you know what, I'm not going to use these wool shearings for weaving and threading and things like that, these wool shearings, they are for insulating pots. Well, at that point, you would be able to move them. And that's what he's saying, right? Right? Again, Amar Rava lo shanu ela shelo yichadan latmana. When the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to move these wool shearings that you insulated with, that's only if you didn't specify that they are going to be used for atmana, because then we're going to assume that they're really still going to be used for like weaving and things. Aval yichadan la'atmana, but if you specified that these wool shearings are going to be for insulating pots, well then, mitaltlin osan, you can then move them and they're no longer muktza. Itmar nami achi, and we also have another statement of Amoraim that would be in a similar vein. Ki asa Ravin, that when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Yaakov, Amar Vasi ben Shaul, Amar Rebbe. So he said the name of Rav Asi, who said the name of, Rabbi Yaakov, who said the name of Rav Asi ben Shaul, who said the name of Rebbe. Lo shanu ela shel yichadan la'atmana. When we say that you can't move them, it's only because you didn't specify that they are going to be used for insulating. Aval yichadan la'atmana metatlan osam. But if you specified that these wool shearings are going to be for insulating, well then you can move them because they're no longer muktza. Now Ravina Amar, Ravina has a different take on it. Ravina says, no, really, you could take Rava's statement at face value. Rava said that once you've insulated a pot with wool shearings, they're no longer muktza. You've demonstrated that you're using them for atmana, for insulating. They're no longer muktza and you can move them. Well then what do you do with our Mishnah that says that even though you've insulated with the wool shearings, you still may not move them? Well, Ravina Amar b'shel heftik shanu. Our Mishnah is talking about a heftik. Our Mishnah is talking about a warehouse. When you have wool in a warehouse, now things in a warehouse are meant to be sold and done business with. So if you went into the warehouse and, on Erev Shabbis, and you took out some wool and you used it for the insulating, this is not wool that you're specifying that is always going to be for insulating, This is probably that you didn't have any other wool, so you're like, oh darn, what am I going to do? So you ran into the warehouse, just took some of the wool that you're planning on selling, you used it for insulating, but you're planning on putting it back into the warehouse. So in this case, that's what the Mishnah is talking about. And that is why the Mishnah says that even though you insulated with them, you still can't move them because, you're still, right, this wool is not specific for insulating, right? It's really, you're planning to put it back in the warehouse and sell it later. So therefore you're not allowed to move it, right? But stam, if you would take if you just had kind of wool shearings in the house and you wanted to use those for insulating, those you would be allowed to move once you've insulated with them. We also learn in a brisa like this. Gizei tzemer shel heftik, if you have wool shearings from the warehouse, ein metaltalin osam, you cannot move them on Shabbos. Ve'miskinon balabayis lishtamish bain metaltalin osam. However, if the balabayis specifically established them or set them aside so for use, such as for insulating, well then you would be able to move them at that point. And therefore our Mishnah is talking about these warehouse wools, and that is why, even though he insulated with them, right now, but they would nonetheless remain muktza since he's planning on putting them back in the warehouse and selling them. Okay. Tana. Rabba bar bar Chana Kamei Rav. Now, Rabba bar bar Chana taught in front of his first cousin once removed, Rav, right? Because Rav's father was a fellow by the name of Evo, and of course, Rabba bar bar Chana was the grandson of somebody named Chana. Now, Chana and Evo, the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Daf Hamud Aleph says, were brothers, and there was another brother there. I think there was two more brothers, but one of the brothers was Rabbi Chia. So, anyways, Rav's father and Rabba bar bar Chana's grandfather were brothers. So I believe that makes them first cousin once removed. So now Rabba bar bar Chana generally quotes Rabbi Yochanan, or at least often he does. Over here he's quoting Rav. Alright? So Tana, Rabba bar bar Chana, well no, he's not quoting Rav, he taught before Rav. Okay. So Rabba bar bar Chana taught before Rav. So Charios shel dekel. Okay. So if you have branches from a palm tree, these are not like lulavs, these are branches that have been on the tree for a while, they got really hard, and you've cut down these branches and you want to use them to put them in a fire and for firewood. Okay. Now, since they're for firewood, so mistama, they are muktza on Shabbos. But let's say you want to now use them on Shabbos for sitting on them. So you basically want to make them unmuktzah. How do you do that? What can you do to take this firewood and, now that you're going to want to sit on them on Shabbos, what can you do to make them now not muktzah? So we have a brayso that says, if you have these palm branches, shegidron le'etzim, that you've cut down in order to use for firewood, v'nimlach alein liyeshiva, and you've changed your mind. So you haven't done anything yet, but you've thought that, you know what, I'm going to want to sit on these branches. So tzarich lekasher. So the Tanna Kama says what you have to do is you then have to somehow tie up these palm branches, and by tying up these palm branches, you are indicating that you want to use them for sitting. Honestly, I don't really understand the context about, I guess because I don't really sit on palm branches, but apparently I guess that would make sense. That by tying up these palm branches, you're showing that you want to sit on these palm branches. And at that point, they wouldn't be muktza the next day on Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, you don't need to tie them up. Just the thought alone before Shabbos that, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to want to sit on these palm branches, that is enough. Hutani lahu amarla, halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Bar Chana taught this brisa in front of Rab, and then he continued and he said, by the way, and the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that it would be enough to simply think before Shabbos that you would like to sit on these palm branches. Rav Asi Amar, now Rav Asi has an interesting take on this, which is Yoshev. So Rashi has the Girsa Yashav, which I think is a little bit better. The Rambam, I think, learns it this way as well. But Yoshev, Afal Pishelo Kisher, Afal Pishelo Chishev. If on Friday already, he didn't tie them up. He didn't even think, you know what, I'm going to want to sit on them tomorrow. But he sat on them on Friday. I don't know, Stam, whatever, he was tired, whatever it was, so he sat on them. He wasn't thinking at all about, I'm going to want to do this tomorrow also. However, he sat on these palm branches. So his actions, the fact that he sat on these palm branches is enough to indicate that these palm branches are for sitting. And then on Shabbos, he can sit on them. Even if he's like, oh, whoa, 1 second. I initially cut these down for burning, and I didn't specifically say that I'm going to want to sit on them on Shabbos. Don't worry, you'll still be allowed to sit on them on Shabbos because he sat on them before Shabbos. Okay. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Rav Huda Amar. 1 second. Did I skip? Yeah, I skipped the line. I'm sorry. Itmar. It was stated. Rav Amar Kosher. Rav says that you would have to tie these palm branches, right? Like the Tanna Kama. Shmuel Amar Choshev. Shmuel says that all you have to do is think about sitting on these palm branches, like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Asi Amar, and Rav Asi says, Yoshev Afal Pishlo Kishev Afal Pishlo Chishev, that if he sat on these palm branches before Shabbos, even though he didn't tie them, and even though he didn't have any specific intention to sit on them on Shabbos, it would be enough to make an muktza. Now, the Gemara asks, Bishlama Rav Hudama Ketana Kama, Ushmuel Nami Hudama Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. I understand Rav's opinion and Shmuel's opinion. Rav, who says that you have to tie up these palm branches, holds like the Tanna Kama in the brisa that Rabbi Bar Chana quoted. And Shmuel, who says that it's enough just to think that you're going to want to sit on them the next day, well, he is holding like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in that brisa. Ela Rav Asi, the Amar Kaman. But who is Rav Asi holding like? Rav Asi, who says that even if you didn't tie them, and even if you didn't have any specific intention or thought to sit on them the next day, it's enough the fact that he sat on them the day before, so on Friday, well then, who does he hold like? Seems like he doesn't hold like the Tanna Kama or Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So, Huda Amar Ki Hai Tana. He says like the following Tana. Now, this is talking about, it sounds like some kind of like a Band-Aid kind of thing, right? You get a cut or something, let's say you scraped your knee, okay? And you were bleeding. So you want to put some kind of a bandage on it. Now, it's not going to be any kind of a medicine, right? It's not going to have any medicinal value, but you just want to cover up the wound so that it doesn't scrape against your clothing, and that will be very uncomfortable. So therefore, you want to cover up this wound. Now, here's the thing. In order for you to be able to go out to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, this bandage would have to be clothing. Because if it's not clothing, then you're just carrying something, in Rosh Hashanah, which is a problem. So, how can you indicate that this bandage is going to be considered like clothing, which would enable you to go out to Rosh Hashanah with it on Shabbos? So we have a brisa that says, right, Tanya, Yotzim b'fakurin u'v'tzifa. So you would be allowed to go out on Shabbos with pakurin, are like some kind of, I guess, bandage that is made out of, or some kind of, something that's made out of flax. Tzipa would be some kind of thing that you can use as like a bandage that's made out of wool. Bizman shetziv'an v'korchem b'mishicha. So you can take them, you can basically wear them on top of this wound on Shabbos if before Shabbos you had already dipped them in oil or colored them somehow with oil and tied them up. I guess by doing that, it somehow indicates that these are going to be used as some kind of a dressing for the wound. Okay? And I guess makes it kind of like a garment for them. Okay? But lo tzva'an v'lo karchan b'mshicha ein yotzim b'hem. Okay? But if you didn't do these activities, which would I guess be similar to tying up the palm branch before Shabbos, right? If you didn't color or apply oil to these bandages or tie them up, well then you wouldn't be able to use them on Shabbos, because if you go out to Rosh Hashanah with them on Shabbos, because if you would, then it would just be like you're carrying them and it wouldn't work. However, however, says this Tana, if before Shabbos you had already gone out with them to Rosh Hashanah, well then, even though you didn't apply this oil and even though you didn't tie them with whatever ties, the fact that you took the initiative and acted and actually went out to Rosh Hashanah with this bandage, so that is already an indication that you are planning to go out with it on Shabbos as a garment, as this thing to wear so that it doesn't hit your clothing. And therefore, even though you didn't tie it and you didn't apply oil, you would still be able to go out. So therefore, Rav Asi is going, he can rely on this Tana to show that even though, you didn't do any actions, any mices to this thing, like tie it up or apply oil, but the fact that you used it in the way that you intend to use it on Shabbos, you did that before Shabbos, so that would be enough. And therefore, in our case of the palm branch, once you sit on it before Shabbos, that is, an indication that you are intending to use it to sit on. And even though you didn't think to use it on Shabbos or you didn't tie it up, that would be acceptable. Okay. Amar Rav Ashi, Afananami Tanina. And Rav Ashi says, look, I can even bring you a Mishnah to support Rav Asi's position. Hakash shal gabe amita, that if you have straw on top of a bed. Okay, so you have a bed. I guess the bed in and of itself isn't comfortable, so you want to make it comfortable by adding some straw to it. So if you find a bed on Shabbos and there's some straw on the bed, okay, now straw in general would be muktza, right? It's for burning, it's for maybe making bricks. It's not, just assumed to be for sleeping on. So lo yina'an'o biyadov amina'an'o begufo. So don't, move it with your hands because it's muktza. You can move it kila achar yad, with your body or something like that, but it would be muktza. But if this straw was food for animals, or if you put a pillow or a sheet on this bed before Shabbos, and Rashi points out that he actually lied down on this bed before Shabbos, well then he would be able to move this straw, because it's his activity before Shabbos of lying down on this straw kind of shows that the intention for this straw is to be lying down as a bed, and therefore you would be allowed to move it on Shabbos. It wouldn't be muktza, shmamina. Okay. So who is this Tanakama? Right? We said that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that it would be enough to think about these palm branches, that you're going to want to sit on them on Shabbos, and that would be enough to allow you to sit on them on Shabbos. The Tanakama had said, no, you'd have to tie them up. Who is this Tana who says that you'd have to tie them up? So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva. This Tana is Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva. The Chiasa Rav Dimi, that when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Zeiri, he said in the name of Zeiri, who I think might be Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Chanina, who said the name of Rabbi Chanina, Pam Achas alach Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva l'makom echad. One time, Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva went to a certain place, okay, Umatzachar shadekel shegidrum l'shum eitzim, and he found over there these branches from a palm tree that were cut down to be used as firewood. Ve'amar lo'im l'tamidav, and Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva said to his students, Uvechishvu k'dei sheneishev aleim l'machar. Go and think about them, go and have in mind that we're going to be using these branches to sit on tomorrow, so that we'll be able to sit on them tomorrow. And says Zeiri, and I'm not sure the particulars of this case, but it was either by a Beis HaMishta, some kind of party, maybe a wedding, or it was by a house of mourners. But the point being that it was in a place where they were preoccupied with lots of other things, and that's why they didn't have time to tie them up. And that's why in that case, Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva said that it would be enough for them to just think that they're going to want to sit on them the next day. However, midika amar ibesa mishte hava, ibesa evel hava, davka besa evel o besa mishte de 3 day havalacha kosher in lo kosher lo. So, however, the fact that Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva said that machshava would be enough because it was a besa evel or a besa mishte, that implies that if it was just a regular situation where you're not preoccupied with lots of other things, you would have to tie them up, and therefore you see that it's Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva who says that you would have to tie up these branches in order to be able to sit on them the next day. Now, the Gemara moves on to an interesting question, which is, what if it's something that you're unable to do a maisa with? A palm branch is an easy example because it's easy to tie them up, right? We have all seen palm branches with all their things sticking out of them. You can tie them up, right? Or even if you're tying a few of them together, I'm not exactly sure how they want to tie these things up. But what if it's something that you can't actually do something to it in order to show that you intend to use it? Let's see. Amar of Yehuda, machnis adam milo kupasu afar v'osebo kol tzarko. So Rabbi Yehuda said, a person is allowed to fill up a basket with dirt and bring it into his house and dump it in his house, and then he'll be able to use it the next day to cover up spit and other things. Rashi says tsoa. I don't know that tsoa is necessarily excrement. It might just mean dirty kind of stuff. But whatever it is, he can take this dirt from before Shabbos, dump it in his house, and then he can use it to cover things up on Shabbos. Darsh Marzutra said Marzutra Mishmei de Marzutra Rabba Vusha Yiched Lo Karen Zavis. That would have to be specific. He would have to specify, a corner in his house. But the point being that on Erev Shabbos, he brings in a basket full of dirt, goes to the corner of his house, dumps it out, and the idea is to use this dirt to cover up spit and things like that on Shabbos. Now, he's not doing a maisa to this dirt. This is dirt. Dirt in and of itself is muktza, okay? So now, he brings this dirt, puts it inside, puts it in the corner. He's intending to use it to cover things up on Shabbos. Now, he didn't do any kind of a maisa to show that this is dirt that's going to be used to cover things up on Shabbos. But stop, we just took it and dumped it on the floor, and yet we see that you're allowed to, right? Rabbi Yehuda Amarav is saying, no, just Rabbi Yehuda says that you're allowed to use it on Shabbos even though you didn't do a maisa to it. So now, Amar Rabbanon Kamed Rav Papa, Kiman, Kreb Shimon ben Gamliel. So now, the rabbis wanted to say, so there were these rabbis in front of Rav Papa, and they said that Rav Yehuda must be saying like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Because Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that it's enough to just have machshava. And here, Rav Yehuda is saying that you can take this dirt, put it in the corner, and then you can use it on Shabbos even though you didn't actually do a maisa. That the machshava seems to have been enough, like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Amri ba'inan maisa. Because the rabbis would say, right, the Tanakama would say that you would have to do a maisa to it. Amulu Rav Papa, to which Rav Papa responded, no, afilu tema Rabbanan. You can even say that the Rabbanan, i.e. the Tanakama, who said that by a palm branch, you would have to tie it up. He would say that in the case of this dirt, you wouldn't have to do anything to it, and you would still be allowed to use it on Shabbos. Because Adkan lo ka'amir Rabbanan, diba'inan maisa el midi dibar avida be maisa. Aval midi dilo bar mi abda be maisa lo. Rav Papa explains that you can make the argument that the Tanakama in the earlier brisa that said that by a palm branch you would need to tie it up in order to be able to sit on it the next day. That's only because you can tie up a palm branch. So since you're able to tie up a palm branch, so then tie it up if you want to indicate that you want to sit on it the next day. However, they would say that the Tanakama over there would admit that in a case like this, where there isn't really much you can do to this dirt, well, then that's that. There's really not much you can do to it, and simply bringing it into the house and putting it in the corner would be enough to say, to indicate that you intend to use it on Shabbos, and it would not be muktza. Okay. Fine. So it would sound like if there's no way to do a maisa to something in order to show that you intended to use it on Shabbos, well then, you wouldn't have to do a maisa and that would be fine. So the Gemara wants to say, Nema ketanai. Well, let's say that this is actually machlokas tanai. That we'll have, one Tana who says like Rav Yehuda is saying, which is that if you can't do a maisa, you don't have to do a maisa. But there'll be another Tana that says, look, if you can't do a maisa to it, well, I'm sorry, but if you can't do a maisa, then there's just no way to make it on muktza. You're not going to be allowed to use it on Shabbos. Sorry. So b'chol chafin es hakelim. So we have a brisa that says that you are allowed to scrub dishes on Shabbos with whatever you want. Chutz miklei kesef b'garatkon. The exception being that you're not allowed to scrub silver, let's say forks and whatever it is, utensils, with this thing called garat kon, because this garat kon is going to scrape the silver and smooth it, and that's going to be mimachik, which is smoothing, which is a melacha on Shabbos. Avol neser v'chol mutter, but to use neser, which doesn't really necessarily have a translation that I'm aware of, or sand would be allowed. Ve'atanya, yet we have another brayse that says neser v'chol aser. But we have another brayse that says that you would not be allowed to scrub silver with neser and sand. So how come one brayse says that you would be allowed to scrub silver with neser and sand, and the other brayse says you wouldn't? So let's say my lab that this is the machlokas between the two brayses. That the first brayse that says that you would be allowed to use neser and chol, it's because they'll say, this is neser and chol that you brought in before Shabbos, and there was no kind of maise that you can do to it to indicate that you plan on using it on Shabbos, and therefore you're allowed to use it on Shabbos even without a maise. And we'll say that the brayse that says that you're not allowed to use neser and chol, it's because he's going to say, look, I understand that there was no maise that you could do to indicate that you plan to use it on Shabbos. However, sorry, that's just life, you're not going to be able to use it on Shabbos, since it's muktza. Okay, so let's say that it's actually machlokas tanaim, what Rav Yehuda is saying about a situation where you are unable to do a maisa to something. So the Gemara says, lo, duchuliyam lo ba'in and maisa. No. In both brises, both the Tana of both brises assumes that if you are unable to do a maisa to something, then you don't have to do a maisa to something. Okay? And you'll still be able to use it. Well then, how come the second brisa is saying then that you may not use neser and chol to scrub silver on Shabbos? V'lo kasha harab Yehuda damadav shem miskavin aser harab shimon damadav shem miskavin muter. Very good. We're familiar with this machlokus already. Davar shem miskavin, when we have something that an unintended activity, an unintended melacha, right? A melacha that will not necessarily happen, but might happen. And if the melacha happens, so Rabbi Yehuda says, look, it's a davar she'ein miskavin, and you're nonetheless, it's aser, it's not allowed to be done. Rabbi Yehuda says, look, if it wasn't intended, it's fine. So therefore, the first brisa, which says that you are permitted to scrub silver with neser and chol, that's Reb Shimon. Because neser and chol might smooth the silver, but it might not. There's no guarantee. And therefore, Reb Shimon says, look, if it ends up smoothing the silver, maximum, it'll be a davar she'ein miskavin, which is mutter, therefore you can do it. Whereas the second brisa, which says that you're not allowed to scrub the silver with neser and chol, will be Rabbi Yehuda, who says, look, I understand that it may or may not happen, but the fact of the matter is, if it does happen, it would be aser. You'd be chayav. I think the correct nomenclature would be aser. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, do not scrub this silver with neser and chol, because we want to avoid a situation where the silver can get smoothed, and that would be a melacha. Okay? But now the Gemara says, 1 second. One second. You're saying that this first brisa, which says that you're allowed to use neser and chol, is Rabbi Shimon, and we're going to say that it's a davar she'ein miskavin. 1 second. Ema Seifa. If we continue in that first brisa, what does it say? Avalo yachof b'hem sairo. But don't use neser and chol to scrub your hair. Now, v'ir Reb Shimon, and if this brisa is Reb Shimon, well, mashra kashari, he would allow you to scrub your hair with neser and chol, because when you scrub your hair with neser and chol, it may pull out some hairs, it might not. And therefore, that would be a davar she'eino miskavin. And Reb Shimon says that that would be permitted. Ditnan, as we learn in a Mishnah in the context of a Nazir. Now, a Nazir is not allowed to cut his hair. And therefore, whatever halachas would apply, or restrictions would apply to a Nazir to prevent him from pulling out any hair, would also be equally relevant to just anybody on Shabbos. And we say that a Nazir, chofef umefaspes avalo sorek, that a Nazir is permitted to scrub his hair with neser and chol, and he can even separate hairs with his hands, but he can't comb his hair, because that will certainly pull out hairs, and we don't want him pulling out hairs, so he can't comb his hair. But he's allowed to scrub his hair with neser and chol, because maximum, maybe some hair will come out, maybe some hair won't come out, and therefore, even if hair does come out, it will be davar she'eino miskavin. And we're saying that it's permitted. So this Mishnah must be Rabbi Shimon, right? So he says that davar she'eino miskavin is permitted. And so we see that Rabbi Shimon says that, a Nazir is allowed to scrub his hair with neser and chol, which would mean that anybody would be allowed to scrub their hair with neser and chol on Shabbos. And therefore, if we have this brisa that's saying that you would not be allowed to scrub your hair with neser and chol on Shabbos, well then that brisa must not be Rabbi Shimon. So don't tell me that the brisa that says that you would be allowed to scrub silver with neser and chol is Rabbi Shimon, and because it's a davar she'eino miskavin and it's mutter, don't say that, because that same brisa continues and says that you wouldn't be able to use it in your hair. And Rabbi Shimon would say that you would be. Okay, so we have to make sense of this thing. So we can't say that those two brisas, the first one is Rabbi Shimon and the second one is Rabbi Yehuda. Elaha v'ha Rabbi Yehuda. No, they're both Rabbi Yehuda. They're both Rabbi Yehuda. And that's why this brisa, when it says that you may not scrub your hair with this neser and chol, because it might pull out hair. And that's a davar she'eino miskavin. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, davar she'eino miskavin is also. So then how do we explain the fact that we said that you would, however, be allowed to use it for silver? I thought it might end up smoothing the silver. Utrei tanai alibu de Rabbi Yehuda. There are two different Tanaim who are explaining Rabbi Yehuda's position. Hai Tana alibu de Rabbi Yehuda savar garir, v'hai Tana alibu de Rabbi Yehuda savar lo garir. However, just the author, this Tana who was teaching in the name of Rabbi Yehuda in the second brisa, who says that you would not be allowed to scrub silver with neser and chol, it's because he holds that neser and chol will smooth the silver. Therefore, it's not allowed. Or even if it might smooth the silver, it's not going to be allowed, because davar she'eino miskavin is asur. And the Tana who was teaching in the name of Rabbi Yehuda in the first brisa, who says that it would be allowed to scrub with neser and chol the silver, it's because his understanding is that neser and chol is not going to scrape and smooth the silver, and that's why it would be allowed. But if it would even be a suffix whether it would smooth the silver, it would not be allowed, because Rabbi Yehuda says davar she'eino miskavin is asur. B'mayu kimta Rabbi Yehuda. So 1 second. So we're saying that this first brisa is Rabbi Yehuda, but 1 second. Ema Seifa. If we continue in that brisa, right? So this brisa that says that you would be allowed to scrub silver with neser and chol. However, you would not be allowed to scrub your hair with neser and chol. It continues, aval panav yadav v'raglav mutter, but you would be allowed to scrub your face, your hands, and your feet. Now, ha ma'aver seyar, but if we're saying that this is Rabbi Yehuda, but how can you scrub your face? If you're a man and you have a beard, you might pull out some hairs from your beard. And therefore, that should be a davar she'eino miskavin. It should be asur, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So how can we say that Rabbi Yehuda is the author of this brisa that's saying that you'd be allowed to wash your face with neser v'chol? So the Gemara says that's not really an issue. I can give you three options. Either it's talking about a katan, a boy who doesn't have a beard, or you could say it's talking about a woman who does not have a beard, or we could be talking about a boy who's castrated and I guess is unable to grow a beard from then on. Okay. Okay, Zeu. But both brises would be according to Rabbi Yehuda. And also from, our original, back to our original point, which is, would you be able, something that you're unable to do a maisa to indicate that you intend to use it on Shabbos, you wouldn't have to do a maisa in that case, and you can use it on Shabbos as long as you thought to use it on Shabbos. Okay, so now that we've talked about scrubbing your face on Shabbos, so we're going to continue talking about scrubbing your face on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yehuda, said Rav Yehuda, offer levinta shari. You're allowed to scrub your face with, if you take like a brick and you break it up and make that into like powder, you can scrub your face with that on Shabbos. Sweet. Amar Rav Yosef, kuspa diasmin, sesame pulp shari. Okay, you're allowed to scrub your face with sesame pulp. Amar Rava, offer pilpale shari. If you take, peppercorns and like make that into powder, like crushed pepper or something, so then like you can, or ground pepper, you could wash your face with. I don't know why you'd want to do that. I don't know, maybe it's a thing. Amar Rav Sheshes, barda shari. Sheshes says you're allowed to scrub your face with barda. My barda, what's barda? Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef said it's this very fancy thing. Tilsa ahala, it's 1/3 aloe. Vitilsa asa, it's 1/3 hadassim. Vitilsa sigle, and 1/3 violet. Sounds very, very fancy. Amar Rav Nechemia bar Yosef, said Rav Nechemia bar Yosef, kolecha dileka ruba ahala shapidami, as long as it's not a majority of aloe, it would be fine. As opposed to Rav Yosef, who seems to say you only have up to 1/3 aloe permitted, but Rav Nechemia bar Yosef says you can even have up to 1/2 aloe. Okay? Bo name Rav Sheshes. They asked Rav Sheshes, Ma'u liftzoa zeisim b'Shabbos. Can you take olives and whack them against stone to sweeten them up? Okay. Amalu, he said to them, and he said to them, what do you mean? Can you even whack olives against a stone during the week? Isn't it going to ruin the olives? Because he assumed that by doing so, you would ruin the olives. So Lema Pliga de Shmuel. So let's say this argues on Shmuel, who we saw in Masechta Brachos. Tamar Shmuel, Osa Adam Kol Tzarko B'Pas. Right? Shmuel says you could do whatever you want with bread. So it sounds like, and we're not concerned about Bizoi Ochlin, about ruining the food. And yet it sounds like Rav Sheshes is concerned about ruining food. So it sounds like he argues with Shmuel. So Amri Paslo Me'ise Ane Me'ise. We say no. Shmuel is also concerned about ruining food. Just that when it comes to, bread is more resilient than olives, apparently. So if you use bread, to put something hot on it or something like that, you'll still be able to use the bread, whereas olives, can get ruined more easily. Fine. Amemar Umar Zutra for Rav Ashi Abu Yasve. So Amemar and Mar Zutra and Rav Ashi were sitting. I feel like this was like a trio that we saw a few times in Masechta Brachos as well. Aisu the Kamayu Barda, and they brought in front of them this very fancy Barda, which is 1/3 aloe, 1/3 hadassim, and 1/3 violet. So Amemar Rav Ashi Mashu. So Amemar and Rav Ashi partook and they were scrubbing their face with it. Mar Zutra lo masha, whereas Mar Zutra refrained. I feel like that was also a thing over there where maybe Amemar and Rav Ashi partook and Mar Zutra didn't. But I don't know, I'd have to look it up. Okay, anyways. Fine. Amule, they said to him, Lo savar lamar lo hadam Rav Sheshes barda shari. So they said to Mar Zutra, no, don't you hold like Rav Sheshes that you'd be allowed to scrub your face with this barda stuff on Shabbos? So Amalu Rav Mordechai. Interesting. So Rav Mordechai, I don't know who he was. Apparently he was sitting there, kind of perked up from the sidelines, and defended or explained for Mar Zutra, Bar mine demar dafilu b'chonami lo svirle. He says, no, leave Mar Zutra alone, because Mar Zutra, even during the week, does not scrub his face with barda, on principle. Disavarla, because he holds ki adatanya, like that which we learn in a brisa, megar adam gildei tsoa v'gildei maka shabsaro b'shvil tsairo, that if a person has mounds of dirt, just like pockets of dirt and maybe a scab from a wound and things like that, so you can scrub off of your body, like cakes of dirt and stuff. You can scrub off of that you can scrub that off of your body during the week because it's uncomfortable. However, in b'shvil yapos aser. But if you're doing it because you want to look beautiful, and as Rashi says, that then it will be a violation of the pasuk of lo yilbash gever simlas isha. Interesting. That a man should not wear the clothing of a woman. And therefore, if you're doing something to be beautiful, so then it would be an issue of trying to do female practices. Interesting. Anyways, so if you're scrubbing up just so you could look beautiful, well then, even during the week it would not be allowed. And for that reason, Mar Zutra refrained from, applying this barda stuff even during the week. The Inhu, but Rav Ashi and Ameimar, Kiman Savua, who did they hold like? Kihadatanya. They held like a different price, which says, Rochetz Adam Panav Yadav V'Raglav B'chol Yom. A person is permitted to wash his face, his hands, and his feet every day, Bishvil Kono, for the Eibishter. Bisham Shnamar Kopal Hashem L'maneu, that everything that the Eibishter does is for his benefit. And therefore, if you are washing your face to sort of, be, to connect to that, to the, Rashi says, that God created everything for His honor. And therefore, if you are washing your face and making yourself presentable to sort of be in line with being honorable for God, because after all, God created everything for His honor, and you want to honor Him, well, that's in line with God and His intention, so that is acceptable. So this is the end of our Mishnah. So we're talking about where you have a box, and in the box it's lined with wool that is going to be for insulation, and then you insulate. Then you put in a pot into that box that's filled with all this wool to insulate the pot. Now you want to remove the contents of the pot on Shabbos. So how do you do it? Can you just lift out the pot from this box and bring it to the table and start eating from it? Or do you leave the pot in the box and then just pour out from the pot? So in the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had said, no, you leave the pot in the box and you just kind of tilt the box and pour out from the pot. Whereas the Chacham said, no, you can take out from the pot and even put back from the box and even put the pot back into the box. So, Amr bi Abba, Amr bi Chia bar Ashi, Hakol modim, she'im niskalkala aguma sha'asur lachzir. So, it says Rabbi Abba in the name of Rav Chia bar Ashi, everyone agrees, both the Chachamim and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah agree, that if you took out the pot from the box and the place where the pot was, that hole, got filled with wool, then certainly even the Chachamim admit that you would not be allowed to put back the pot in the box, because you're going to end up moving the wool, and that is not allowed. Okay. But the Gemara asks, 1 second, Tnan. We learned in our Mishnah, Chacham omim no telu machzir. 1 second, the Chacham said you're allowed to take out the pot and even put it back. Now, hechidami, what are we talking about? Idilon is kalkula aguma. If it's talking about where, when they pulled out the pot, none of the wool fell into the place where the pot was, well, shaper ka'ami rabbanon. Well, the rabbanon have a solid argument, which is, why the heck can't I put back the pot? I mean, I'm not going to be moving any wool. So elalav hafalpidin is kalkula aguma. Rather, it must be that when he pulled out the pot, some of the wool did fall in there, and the chiddush of the Chacham is that nonetheless he would be allowed to put back the pot. So the Gemara says, no. Even the Chacham would agree that if when you pulled out the pot, some wool fell into that space, you would not be allowed to return the pot, because you'd be moving the wool. Okay? So then if we're talking about that you're allowed to put it back only when none of the wool fell into the area, well then how come Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that you can't take out the pot? Kilu, what's he concerned about? If they're both talking about in a case where none of the wool fell into the space. So the olam dlon is kalkula, it's talking about where no wool fell into the space, but v'hacha b'choshishin kamiflagi. The question is, do we have to be concerned that wool is going to fall into that place? Ma'asav choshishin shema tiskalkel aguma u'ma'asav ein choshishin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is concerned that, look, I don't even want you to remove the pot at all. I don't even want to get into the possibility of some wool falling into the place, and then you'll return the pot and you'll end up moving, dealing with muktza. He doesn't even want to go there. So he's choshesh. Doesn't even want to go there. He says, look, just leave the pot in the box and pour out from the pot while it's still in the box. Chacham said, look, we're not choshesh. You could take out the pot, and as long as no wool has fallen into that area, you could put it back. If wool has fallen into the area, don't put it back. That's their opinion. That's machlokes between Rabbi Elazar ben Azar and the Chacham. Are you choshesh that when you take out the pot, that maybe some wool is going to fall in there? Amar Rav Huna, said Rav Huna, Hi slikusta. Okay, there was some kind of slikusta. And what that was, it was some kind of a plant that was very pleasant to look at, very pleasant to smell. And what you would do is you would, before Shabbos, or I guess whenever, you would take some kind of a vessel, maybe like a vase or something like that, and you would fill it up with like, I don't know, soil, and then you would put this plant into the soil, and when you want to smell it, you would take it out of the soil and you would smell it. Okay? So, Amar Rav Huna, Aislikusta, Datsa Shalfa Vada Datsa Sharia Vilav Aser. So if before Shabbos you had put this plant into the soil, pulled it out of the soil, and then put it back, then you would be allowed to pull it out and smell it on Shabbos, because the assumption is that since you already pulled it out and put it back, so then when you pull it out again to smell it on Shabbos, you're not going to be moving any of the dirt, because you already, whatever got moved before Shabbos. But if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't be allowed to move to smell it on Shabbos, because you'd be moving the dirt when you pull out the plant. Shmuel, Amar Shmuel, Hai Sakina devene orve, Datsa Shalfa Vada Datsa Shari Vilav Asir. Apparently, I guess the builders, if they had some kind of a knife or something and they needed to stash it away when they left at the end of the day, they would just, chuck it, they would stick it into, in between a row of bricks, and then they would come back and get it, the next time they came back. So, if you have a knife that before Shabbos, you stuck it between a row of bricks and pulled it out, right, and then put it back, so then, on Shabbos, you'd be allowed to remove the knife, because we're not concerned that it's going to move any, I guess, of the bricks or whatever, is between the bricks. But if you didn't do that, so then you would not be allowed to pull it out, because it's going to move the muktza. Fine. Marzutra, v'temer of Ashi Amar, bigordisa dekane shabridame, that if you have like a bunch of reeds, that are like a bunch of reeds bunched together, you could put the knife there. We're not concerned that you're going to like smooth out any of the reeds. Seder. Amalei Rav Mordechai the Rava. Now Rav Mordechai said to Rava, Masiv Rav Katina to Yuvta. Now Rav Katina asked a kasha that will be a problem for Shmuel and Rav Huna, who said that you would have to, let's say regarding this plant, you would have to stick the plant into the dirt before Shabbos, pull it out and put it back, right? Because if you pull it out on Shabbos, moving the dirt would be a problem. So 1 second. We have a brayso that says, Atomin lefes utsnonos tachas agefen. If you take a turnip or a radish and you put it in some dirt under a grapevine before Shabbos, so imhayu miktsas olav megulin eno choshesh. As long as some of the, what's it called? The, I feel like this is an obvious word. The leaves. Yeah, I guess that's a decent word, right? It's like on a radish or on a turnip, so they're like leaves that you can pull it out of the ground from the leaves. So as long as some of the leaves are sticking out of the earth, you can pull it out on Shabbos, it's no problem. And we're not concerned about any of the dirt that moves. If there's no leaves sticking out, you're gonna have to, with your hand, you're gonna have to move around the dirt in order to pull out the radish or the turnip. Well, that'll be a problem. But as long as leaves are sticking out, then you can pull it out, no problem. You don't have to worry, lo mishum kilayim. You don't have to worry about as long as you can pull it out, so you don't have to worry about, kilayim, like mixing it with other, grafting. You don't have to worry about shvius, right? V'lo mishum shvius. If it's shmita, you don't have to worry about like harvesting or anything like that. V'lo mishum meiser. You don't have to worry about like now that when you pull it out of the ground, do you have to take meiser again? No, you don't. V'nitel b'Shabbos, and you can also even pull it out of the ground on Shabbos, and it's no problem. And therefore, let's say this plant that you would smell, it shouldn't be a problem, even if it is going to move the dirt when you pull it out to smell it to Yuvta, and that is a kasha on them. And the Gemara doesn't seem to resolve that kasha, so it sounds like it leaves it as a kasha. Okay, that was Daf Nun of Masechta Shabbos. Let's recap. So the daf started with moving wool insulation on Shabbos. So Rava, at his opinion, which is as long as you insulate with wool, so then you'll be able to move the wool on Shabbos. It won't be muktza. Then this student who showed up in the yeshiva and it was his first day, he asked the kasha on Rava. He says, yeah, but what about our Mishnah that says that even though you insulated with wool, you still would not be allowed to move them on Shabbos? So therefore the Gemara said, you know what Rava really means is that if you specified that you're going to be using from now on this wool for insulation, then you would be allowed to move it on Shabbos. But otherwise, you would not be allowed to move it on Shabbos, just like the Mishnah indicates. Ravina then said that actually Rava's right. If you use wool for insulation, then you can move it on Shabbos. When the Mishnah says that you can't move it on Shabbos, it's wool that you took out from your warehouse that you're planning on using for business, and you're still planning on selling it, and therefore it would still be muktza even if you insulated with it. We talked about how do you make a muktza item non-muktza, right? So Rav's opinion was, let's say you have these palm branches that you initially cut down for burning wood, so they would be, for burning in a fire, so they would be muktza on Shabbos, but now you want to sit on them. So what you would do is, Rava would say you'd have to do a maisa. You'd have to tie them up to show that you want to sit with them. I don't know if I said Rava, but Rav said you'd have to do a maisa. Shmuel says that it's enough just to have a machshava, just to think, you know what, I'm going to want to sit on these tomorrow, and that's enough, and then you could sit on them. Rav Asi says, look, even if you didn't have a machshava and you didn't have a maisa, but the fact of the matter is that you sat on them the day before, so then that would be enough of an indication that you could sit on them on Shabbos as well. What if what if it's a situation where there is no action that's possible to be done, right? Such as Rav Yehuda's example, where you've taken some dirt and put it in the corner of your house, and you're going to want to use it to cover things up on Shabbos. You can't really do a maisa to that dirt to show that you want to use it on Shabbos. So the conclusion essentially is that would be permitted since you're unable to do a maisa. Right? Then we then got into this whole brisa about like scrubbing silver on Shabbos, and we got that went to all sorts of places. He wanted to say meus davar she'eino miskaveh, whatever it is. But the point, the main point of that whole thing though was to say that if you're unable to do a maisa to something, so then it would be mutter to use it on Shabbos. Okay, we talked about sort of in passing, can you whack olives against a stone to sweeten them? It would sound like no, since it would ruin the olives. Okay, and men kind of making themselves beautiful by like scrubbing things on their face and stuff. So it sounds like if it's just to make yourself beautiful, maybe that wouldn't be advised, but it would be okay if it's to serve God and sort of connect to this concept that God created everything for His honor, and you therefore want to be part of that honor. Okay? A box that has insulation, that is insulated with wool, and you have a pot in there. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that you should leave the pot in there and not take it out at all and just pour out from the pot when it's in the box, because he's concerned that if you take it out, then maybe some wool will fall into the space and you might end up moving that wool, so just keep it in the box. Whereas the Chacham say, look, you could take it out of the box, it's no problem, you don't have to worry. But if some wool falls into that space, don't put back the pot. Don't put back the pot because the wool would be muktza. Then at the end we talked about, can you like pull a radish out of the ground, let's say, or pull this plant out of this soil that you want to smell, even though you might move the soil, and it sounds like it would be okay, at least based on the maskana of the Gemara. Okie dokie. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I hope I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.